Good morning. It is 9:01 a.m. on Thursday, August 26, 2021, and I call this meeting of the Board of Directors for the Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chuck McMahon is absent. Eric Enriquez. Present. He's present. Diana Trujillo is absent. Yvonne Flores is absent. Lynn Ellens.
Here.
Cassandra Gandara.
Here.
Tessa Beta-Stuve.
Here.
Manny Sanchez.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to item number 2. Are there any changes to the agenda? I don't think there is. I know there's a couple of changes to presenters, Mr. Thacker, but I don't think I think we're good with the agenda as is. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
All righty. So can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Vice Chair Beta-Stuve. All right, is there any input from the board? All right, seeing none, can we get a roll call, please?
Board Member Ellens.
Yes.
Board Member Gandara.
Yes.
Board Member Beta-Stuve. Yes. We have too many microphones on. Mr. Ellens, you need to turn yours off, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chairperson Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the agenda is approved. We're on to the approval of the minutes from the regular ASCMV board meeting held on July 22nd, 2021. I did want to note that we do need one small change, which was on page 1, line 18, when it was under call to order. The minutes originally noted it was Chair Flores, and it just needs a correction to Chair Sanchez. So I don't know if I can get a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended, or amended with that amendment, excuse me.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Allens.
Second, Gandara.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. Okay.
Board Member Ellens? Yes. Okay, I got it. Board Member Gandara?
Yes.
Board Member Beta-Stuve?
Yes.
Chairman Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the minutes are approved. All right, we're on to reports and presentations. First, we will have by Action Program for Animals. So I know this is, for those that might be watching or attending our ASCMV board meeting, we've changed this up a little bit. Generally, we've had the Coalition for Pets and People, but we decided to try a little bit different and focus specifically on some of our community members and partners in the community. So,
hello.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us here. I'm Michelle Mounier. I'm the Executive Director of Action Programs for Animals. I had a presentation. How does that work, Clint? Sorry, I haven't been at a meeting in many, many years.
No problem. We're just glad you could join us.
And then to go next. Thank you. So, want to give you a little bit of a history, who we are and what we do, brief history of our organization, our current intake, rescue, and outcome stats, our partnership with the ASCMV going back to 2012, and our future plans. So, trying to do our history at a glance, it's been 12 years, so I try to do my best. We were founded in 2009. I personally founded APA to help model no-kill programs and services in our area. At that time, it was a pretty still controversial, not very popular idea here in Doña Ana County. So we started off very small with a pet food bank program, public outreach events, and at that time we had annual earnings of approximately $10,000 a year. Then in 2012, we started rescuing dogs and cats, primarily from the ASCMV, from the shelter. At that point, we were pulling more than 90% of our rescues from the shelter, using a very dedicated set of foster homes, including myself, and doing off-site adoption events every weekend. We're literally out every Saturday and Sunday for years. During that time as well, we partnered with a veterinarian that was a former shelter veterinarian, Dr. Hinkle, and we started providing regular public low-cost microchip and vaccination clinics. So since 2012, we have vaccinated and microchipped thousands of animals in Doña Ana County. And we still provide those every other month at our location. We don't do them mobily too much anymore. We rented a location at 800 West Picacho in 2014 and opened our first adoption center. Then in 2016, we took over the PAWS prison training program in partnership with the Southern New Mexico Correctional Facility, which we still run. Then, with generous community support and a large bequest, we purchased our Solano Animal Clinic location, or former Solano Animal Clinic location where we are now, at 537 North Solano, and we moved there last year in 2020. We also opened the Second Chance thrift store in 2019 to help support our operations. So as we grew, by 2014, our earnings were over $50,000 a year. Now we're one of the largest animal welfare nonprofits in Doña Ana County with earnings of more than $650,000 a year. We share our good fortune as much as we can with other local rescues with the shelter in terms of sharing resources that we can't use or have surplus of. We offer short-term boarding of animals to rescues that have animals going out on transport. We offer some vet care services to other rescues and their animals, and volunteer services when they need it, if we have the chance to help out. Next slide. These are our rescue stats through July 2021. So I have been keeping the stats in the form that you see to the left. So to date, we have taken in 104 dogs, 260 cats this year. And I break it down by how many we take from the ASCMV and how many we take from the community. And our goal has always been to rescue the most at-risk animals at the shelter, which other rescues do not take. So we do a lot of the Chihuahuas, a lot of pit bull type dogs, a lot of long-term dogs, and of course cats and kittens that are always in surplus this time of year. So now, with the way things are shifting, when you start getting closer to no kill, what happens is the very ideal animals are scarce. Small dogs in this community that aren't Chihuahuas are scarce, and people are looking for them. So we do take some of those from the community because the shelter ships most of them out. And so what you get to also is you're trying to rescue animals that need a lot more rehab and a lot more help, medically and behaviorally. So that's the point I think that we're at in Doña Ana County, except for kittens and puppies. So our outcomes for this year to date, we've had 178 adoptions, transferred out 97, mostly kittens. Euthanasia 10, died in our care 20. So being a no-kill rescue like us that manages our intake, we have the luxury of providing the best possible outcome for each animal. We give them the best medical care. Our veterinary care expense is our largest expense. And we only euthanize for medical reasons. Poor prognosis to avoid their suffering or end their suffering. And very rarely do we euthanize for deeming animals too aggressive or unsafe to place in the community. But we still do that when we have to. We're not going to place a dangerous animal with anybody. So all who die in our care are mostly kittens who don't survive during kitten season. Like this year, we've had a very strange, deadly strain of upper respiratory infection. It's been very odd. Our vets at Schumacher Veterinary Clinic have actually sent 2 of our kittens for necropsy to try to find out what it is. I found out from another partner rescue in Albuquerque that they're seeing the same thing. It's a very strange upper respiratory infection where they seem good, they're getting better, then they go downhill again. Seem better, go downhill again. So we've lost a lot to that strange disease. Every year there's different challenges. So our partnership with the ASCMV, we've been pulling animals from there since 2012. Now we primarily pull adult cats, all our large dogs, and kittens. We also have been taking more animals from the public to try and divert them from the shelter, such as kittens. This graph shows the transfers last year outside of from the ASCMV out to other rescues. And you see that we are the largest cat partner transfer, at least last year we were with the ASCMV. Our intake in 2020 was a bit lower. COVID made us close for a little while. It kind of slowed things down for a few months. And then also in 2020, you see that overall, we were the second largest transfer partner for the ASCMV. So our future plans are, as more gifts and support come in, we will improve our adoption center. We are always trying to adapt to our communities and the ASCMV's changing needs. We always welcome ASCMV staff and board members to come visit with us to our locations. We meet regularly with Clint and the shelter veterinarians to have discussions to talk about where are we at, what can we do we need to change anything, what challenges are we facing. So another thing we're thinking of doing at our location is mobile spay and neuter clinics. We have an empty Morgan building that we've set up and is ready to use for recovery. So we're waiting to hear back from Dr. Short at the Zia Mobile Vet Clinic on her prices. And then we also want to expand our thrift store in a few years so we can address more community needs and also be more financially sound ourselves. It's always a struggle when you're a nonprofit because there's no guarantee of funds. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Allens.
Thank you. That $650,000 figure
Yes.
that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
would you review that again? What does that represent?
That is our earnings per year. About 300 and something thousand of that comes from thrift store earnings, and then the rest is grants and donations.
That's far more than I would have ever expected.
We have grown even more than I ever expected.
I mean,
We have employees now at both locations. I have a manager at the thrift store, a manager at the adoption center. They have part-time support staff. I am very thrifty and frugal about staff. So I'm always on my managers about hours and that we only hire people we absolutely need to take care of the animals and take care of business. So
What is your thrift store gross?
that's about $300,000 a year right now.
And where's the other $350,000 from?
Grants and donations. Some are corporate donations and they're a little bigger. There's local foundations that help in big ways. Like when we moved to our new building, a local foundation helped us put our HVAC and air exchange system in the building, which costs more than $25,000. So when you're corporate, everything is more expensive, as you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone
Mayor
else?
Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Michelle, for being here this morning and
Thank
for
you.
your presentation.
I appreciate it.
I haven't seen you in so long.
I know, I
It feels
know.
maybe 6 years, I'm thinking.
I haven't come to meetings in a while, I admit.
Yeah.
I do have another job.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know. Michelle, talk to me currently, I don't know what, I don't think your slides are numbered.
Yes.
Currently, you have how many cats and dogs in your center?
So the max we can house in our adoption center, it's more than an adoption center. We care for animals there 24/7.
Okay.
We can have up to 12 large dogs, up to 4 small dogs. And during cat and kitten season, we can have anywhere from 80 to 100 cats and kittens in the building that we care for.
Okay.
We have a ringworm ward, we have a sick ward, we have a bottle baby ward, then we have a healthy cat room and a healthy kitten room.
Okay, all right,
Mhm.
thank you for that.
Okay.
Also, talk to me about gaps and barriers that you're seeing related to not only the care, I guess, in your center, but what you're seeing specifically here in Doña Ana County or that we
Well-
need to be aware of.
What you're still seeing with the cats and kittens is a result of the lack of full-scale TNR, which we're trying to address with the new ordinances. That will help immensely. So once you get those cats that people are feeding outdoor cats fixed, you're not going to have this many kittens. That's the biggest issue we still face yearly. And I know it's similar with puppies. We just don't deal with puppies as much because a lot of groups do and the shelter transports them out. So we've kind of gotten out of the mom and puppies business and focused on the cats and kittens. But it's still an issue as well. So increasing spay and neuter is always important, low cost or affordable spay and neuter. And some of the last items I think that we need to address in the community is also from the animal control side. So you need an animal care and control model and that leadership. And then your animal control departments are very, very understaffed. I think we need to start holding people more accountable for care than we do now. And that's the only way to change things over time. You know, New Mexico ranks, I think, the 50th in terms of animal abuse or not holding animal abusers accountable, and that's a sad rate.
Thank you, Michelle, for your honesty. And then
Yes.
lastly, do you offer, as part of your adoption services, training for, or do you do matching, you know, as well?
We do.
with your-
We take a long time matching people when people have to come in person and talk to us. Even during the pandemic, we did it by appointment. And we had, you know, a lot of support as far as fostering during the pandemic when people were home, so that helped a lot. But we do matching, and we also do post-adoption support very strongly. We start following up right away. If there's any issues in the home, we have a dog trainer that helps people. We have cat behavior experts that help people and give them advice. We do everything we can to mitigate a return, but we also strongly suggest they return the animal if it's just not working out. We rather, you know, the animal not stay in a bad situation.
Sure.
So we always take our animals back. We have some that come back to us years later, and we take them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that number, Michelle, that return?
The return rate is probably, it's around 15%, less than 20%.
Okay.
We also do a sleepover program. That helps a lot. People can take an animal home for a week or two before they decide to adopt. Many people don't like to return. They feel it was a failure, or they just don't like to adopt and return. They want to see if it's going to work out first before they make the commitment.
Sure.
And then they also lose the adoption fee most of the time. So this is a way for them to try it out.
Right.
You know, that doesn't work for very scared animals that came from a hoarding case, or adult cats that sometimes take a lot longer to acclimate, but at least they can tell if it's going to start working out or there's nothing dire going to happen between animals. Even if you do a social with 2 dogs, for example, they can go home and start having issues a day later. You know, that happened to us recently with one of our PAWS grads. Went home on a sleepover, looked like a great match. He's a big old hunky pit bull, and she's a 8-month-old husky. Well, the husky started going after him. So you just never know. That's why we always offer support and take them back right away. It's just not going to work out.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for your comments and for your partnership. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Take
and
care.
thank you for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Betty-Suvi?
Thank you, Michelle.
Did you have a question?
I do have a couple
okay,
questions.
I'm sorry.
First, Mayor Pro Tem, I can attest that they do have a wonderful follow-up program. We have 2 kittens from you all, and one of them, he's 3 years old now, and we've still
wow.
gotten a follow-up call. So just checking in, so I really appreciate that. And also, just making sure that while you are selective and you do try to do the best match, I don't think you're necessarily overly restrictive, which we can find, I think, in some organizations where the screening is so...
We do practice open adoptions, which many rescues do not like and do not approve of. You can see things different ways. If you go do a home check, you might think it guarantees the animal's going to be in a good home, everything's going to work out, but people are prepared for a home check. So what can happen later is the animal can still be thrown outside or neglected, so we just practice what national groups recommend, which is open adoptions with strong post support. If we feel like there's an issue when we call, then we'll go do a home check. So it's just a different way. If we're placing a very scared animal, we do a home check. Like we had recently some Chihuahuas from a hoarding case that took more than 6 months to rehabilitate. If they go to a home and get lost, you're never going to find them again. It's happened to us in the past. So you learn from the past too. If we're going to place a really at-risk dog that's scared, that might get away. Then we go do a real good yard check and stuff. Like we have one pending adoption, and our manager went yesterday and saw that she had these big gaps in her fence. So she's not going to take the dog until she fixed the big gaps, because that little Chihuahua can get right through them. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we've made a few changes within policy, including our adoption fees this year. And I was going to check to see if that affected you all as well, and what you're seeing since we've made these changes.
I don't think it has affected us. People in this community they don't want to pay high adoption fees, as you know. So, you do hear people complain that they went up, but I wish we could charge a higher adoption fee. We charge pretty low adoption fees considering we adopt out a paws dog that is completely trained. We should be able to charge more of an adoption fee for those dogs. And we do for smaller ones now, because they are in demand, but the large ones are so hard to move. Even fully trained, it's just really hard to move, especially if they don't get along with other animals. So then you're stuck with that. I can see our animals are worth a lot more than the adoption fees we charge for them. We spend a lot more per animal than what the adoption fee covers. So, you hear of other areas that charge $300 or $400 for an adoption, and you're like, wow, how do you do that? It's just very hard here. People don't want to pay it.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
And with the final question that I have, you were saying that you do a lot of medical care.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing the cost that you have spent on animals this year?
So far, our costs per year are close to $100,000 on vet care. In the past 2 months, the biggest expense we have had is those kittens I was telling you about that have that upper respiratory infection. On emergency care, we've spent about $25,000 in the last 3 months with them in and out of the hospital. When an animal comes to us, a dog that needs something that hasn't been done, whether it's orthopedic surgery, dental, anything like that, we take care of it before they go to another home. So some of those expenses can be high. A dog with TPLO knee surgery costs $2,000 or more to get the surgery, with 3 months of aftercare. So some of them take a lot longer and cost a lot more to ready for adoption.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions. And
Sure.
So, you provided some input in terms of, what you're seeing in the community and that perspective. I was just curious, you had mentioned the relationship you've been able to have with the ASCMV, the communications with the vets and so on.
Yes.
What is, one of the things that I'm curious of and is, how do you, being from a community member, a partner here to the ASCMV, I'm going to guess that we probably don't have that same level of engagement from some of the other partners. What would you recommend? What do you see that's worked well, or things that we can try to maybe look to carry over to the other organizations that might help? Because I think the communication to me seems like a huge one. But is there anything else that you can identify as like a best practice, things that from your perspective might help the ASCMV continue to work and build that relationship with other community members?
Well, because we're local, even though we're one of the top transfer partners, many of the other transfer partners or the shelter are not local. But I would say for local rescues, maybe those who don't reach out to you, then reach out to them a few times a year and sit down with them. I don't really know what Clint's relationship is with the other rescues in town. Another thing rescues and the shelter have to do is agree to disagree, sit at the table, and if you don't agree about something, that's fine. You need to move forward on the things you can work on together and agree upon. And then there's some things that are out of our control, and we just work around it, such as the TNR issue.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. And I think it was actually in the last meeting that, Clint was very forthcoming and said that, having that communication, especially, I think he brought you all up, APA, as an example. And I think he did say that, sometimes there are hard conversations, and you don't always agree, but I think having that hard conversation really helps with understanding what you're seeing, what the community members are seeing, and I think he had mentioned that, so I appreciate your feedback.
And you know, APA has always been about doing our own thing and kind of, our nose isn't in other people's business much. If we get involved, it must be something dire, but we hardly don't get involved in shelter operations or with other rescues as far as nitnoiding about things. We just do our work. We're overwhelmed doing our own work. We don't have time to play games.
Oh, I appreciate that. And then one last question is, and I don't know if, well, you have the opportunity and you have the podium. Do you have any events that, or anything upcoming that you'd like to announce for the public, or at least get that on the public space?
You know, the pandemic has been hard in terms of fundraising. We were about to have an open house finally at our new location next month or in October, and now we're going to table that until January because of the Delta variant. And so it's been hard. We do a lot of online events. You know, if people could look for that. We're going to have another big auction from our thrift store for the, in partnership with the Mesilla Valley Estate Sales during the holiday season. So that's a way to help at this time because it's really hard to do events. We will have another vaccination clinic in October. We just don't have a date and time yet.
And if people want to get connected with your organization, how would they do that?
They can call the info line first. That's 575-644-0505. I man that line. So if I don't answer, then please leave a message, and I do get back to people within a day or two.
Great. All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other questions. Commissioner
Mr.
Allen?
Chairman, you said that you have at your facility 8 large dogs and 4 small dogs.
We can have up to 12 large and up to 4 or 5 small. Yes.
And how many fosters do you have?
Fosters for large dogs are very scarce. We hardly have any. It's always been an issue. When we first started out, I did all the large dogs at my old house. I built kennels outside and kennels inside, and I used to take care of them myself. So for small dogs, we have roughly 5 fosters. For cats and kittens during this season, we have 10 to 20 that come and go during the season. People get tired. You talk about neonatal kittens, bottle baby kittens. They're really hard to take care of. It's very disheartening when they don't survive. So a lot of fosters will just wane and on being able to help. It's just a very hard thing to do.
And how many foster dogs?
I'm sorry?
How many dogs are being fostered?
Just around 5 small. All of our large dogs we care for in-house.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board?
Yeah, well, could you give me your phone number again, please?
575. Oh, okay. Ready?
Yeah.
575-644-0505.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I appreciate
Yes, thank you for
it
having
was
us.
good. Thank you, Michelle.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, we're on to agenda item 4B, the city and county ACO reports. We will do the city reports. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Owens?
I think we have the county clerk in the audience, do we not?
We do.
We do. She's president of APA, I believe.
Guilty. Thank you, Commissioner Allen. All right.
Good morning, everybody. I am Lieutenant Joy Wiedela, and I am here to present the ASCMV monthly board meeting report from the ACOs. All right, as far as reported stray animals, there were 585 reported stray animals for the month of July 2021. 258 were gone on arrival. 327 stray animals were apprehended. 274 of those strays impounded at the shelter. Of that, 133 were dogs, 141 were cats. 53 were successfully field returned, while 26 were unsuccessful, but an attempt was made. That's a total of 79 identifiable stray animals. When we look at our 3-year comparison, we're somewhat similar to that gray 2019. Yellow is the 2021. 2020 is the green there. And so as you can see, 2020 was a little bit of a different year and probably correlates with the pandemic. But we are very consistent with what the reported strays were back in 2019. As far as field return to owners, we had rather an exceptional month where we were able to return 53 this month, where in previous years, in 2020 it was 38, and in 2019 it was 31. This is reasons for owner releasing animals. Majority of those owners releasing their animals this last month was due to the dog being more aggressive. There were some cats that were released as far as them not being allowed in their apartment. Again, dogs being sick, the owner of the dogs moving, the dogs having a tendency to escape, and then also not being able to financially provide for the dog. Reasons we were unable to field return, the majority of those, 21 as you can see, where there was no contact by phone, and if there was a residence that we were able to find, no contact at the residence as well. And that is the July report from the Animal Control Office. Any questions?
Any questions for Lieutenant? Okay. No, we're easy today.
I was going to say, came prepared. And just to highlight, I wanted to highlight what the man before me was saying in reference to animal control officers. Yes, we are short. We are working on it right now. We've actually got 2 in the process of being hired. Yes, we are working on it and addressing it. And hopefully we can start taking a look at those bigger numbers, especially with the implementation of the TNR, because I could see extra responsibilities occurring as a result of that. And with those extra responsibilities could potentially mean additional officers. So,
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Flores? Or I guess Mayor Pro Tem? Who?
Thank you.
Sorry, okay.
No, it's quite all right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Joy. Yeah, it's truly lamentable. I mean, there's no other word for it, for having a lack of ACOs. Is there anything that your department is doing, the leadership is doing to assure that we fill those vacancies? And I think that the vacancies that you're seeking are probably still not going to suffice, meet the need. And my biggest concern is that we really don't have the transports, for lack of a better word.
the cars.
The cars, but it's not just a car. It's, having air conditioning in there, having the crates at work, because I know that Gino has said to me that some of them don't have air conditioning, the crates are broken, that one side goes up, the animal goes out the other side. So what actions and what do we, and I'm speaking now specifically for the city, as a board member, of course, but for the city and directing it also to our assistant city manager, do you know of any affirmative steps that have been taken and actually come to fruition? And how long has this been going on? Because that really bothers me. There's just no other way to put it. I think it's inhumane for us not to be doing something a little bit more affirmative and really coming to making it happen.
Counselor, I do hear your concerns, and it is concerning, especially when you hear about no air conditioning in a possible ACO unit. We are addressing those concerns. We just had a vehicle inventory completed where we actually contacted our upper management and said this is what we need. It's my understanding that there have been 2 vehicles that are specifically allocated towards animal control that will be coming in order to help replace that fleet. Other areas, as far as you were concerned in reference to the amount of ACOs that we have. Anytime that we have a position open, we have been going through the city process as far as creating that and getting new people in. That's usually, it's not a quick process. So once the time you open up and you post those vacancies, from the time that you post to the time you get the person in, following each procedure and each step in that hiring process, you're probably looking at about 6 months. And so it's great right now because the vacancies that we do have, we're looking at filling those within the next month.
Okay, and now are those vacancies because someone's retiring, or are those new vacancies? Because, yeah, and you're nodding your head, so that means that the existing positions aren't sufficient. So the vacancies being filled is really not really an increase in ACOs. It's only a filling of vacancies. So we actually need to, I don't know what management needs to do, but I know that I personally, as a city councilor and as a member of this board, and I think that my colleagues here are in agreement, is that we need to move. The county needs to move. We need to move. We need to do something a lot more affirmative and make sure that everything comes to be. So am I correct in what I've just said about those vacancies being there as a result of retirement?
Yes, that is correct. They
That's what I
were
thought.
vacancies as a result of retirement. And Counselor, you are right that we have to move in a direction that supports where the data is coming from. And so if I have data right now that shows that I'm having consistently the same number of calls for service, and we've been able to handle it when we're fully staffed, then I need some other kind of data to support existing and creating those new positions. And that's where, again, when we're shifting to this new ordinance and this new TNR policy, I would foresee a lot more responsibilities, a lot more on our animal control officers, such as implementation of more traps and rotating through traps, all of that. And so with those new job responsibilities, obviously you'd have to then show the data of how that's going to require an officer to have time away from taking those calls for service and then creating those new positions.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you're aware of the situation. I mean, that you recognize what the issues are there. So thank you, Joy. Thank you very much for your work.
You're welcome, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Mayor Pro Tem Gandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your presentation. We've been talking about this for some time, and also in council meetings about what we feel are discrepancies in terms of, or the need really, of more animal services, codes officers, those kinds of things, and sort of the tools. And please know that we're very supportive of law enforcement and our codes, and we just know that there's always been this, I wouldn't say a rift, but you know, some issues related to how codes is responding, you know, to the animals that are running free and can't get them to the owners, and some of that is irresponsible pet ownership, right? And then others is maybe looking at and I don't know if it's policy, I don't know if it's the law, state law, where you made mention, I think, I don't know what slide that was, but attempting to go and return animals to the owners, not being able to get them on the phone, incorrect information on their microchip, or just not seeing anybody in their residence, if you will, or no one there. So what can we do, right, if we know that the animal is from this specific location, resident, but it seems like, I want to say there's an internal policy that the codes is feeling uncomfortable just leaving the animal there without speaking to an owner.
Yeah, we're responsible for that animal. And so we will be responsible for the safety of that animal until we can relinquish it either to the shelter or the actual owner. But steps have been taken. So with that new ordinance that just passed, the Chapter 7 animal ordinance, with the chipping, we actually included in that ordinance how if you do move guess what? You need to contact us so we can know where your animal belongs and where your animal goes.
Right.
And so I think it's taking measures like that and problem solving. On one of my slides, it talked about how we have escapees and how some of them wanted to be relinquished because they were escapees. The animal control officers that I'm working with, they're really good about getting with the people that have these escapees and these strays and saying, okay, can I go into your yard and let's take a look. Let's problem solve. Let's figure this out. Like, why does this keep on occurring? And then let's try to come up with a solution. Each incident is obviously going to be different, dependent on the family and the pet. But again, it really comes down to what's the best case for everybody involved. And again, trying to problem solve that way. That's where hopefully with this new animal ordinance taking effect at the end of the month, hopefully we can encourage more of the chipping and accurate chipping to take place as far as the residents and where that animal belongs to. I'm optimistic about that, and I would like to think that bringing more of the vet clinics and everybody working together, those key stakeholders, so that we can all be on the same page when it does come to that microchipping, I would think that that's also potentially going to help us. It's taking these steps, and then it's going to be, again, collecting that information, collecting that data, and seeing where we go from there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and hearing from you, your perspective, your philosophy. I think it's that relationship building, that engagement that's so crucial. And you took the word problem solving. That's a really important aspect. And you also mentioned from here on out, which is going to be very important to us, is collecting data to support that TNR, right? So that in a year's time, we can come back and say, look, this has been really successful, or these are gaps, these are barriers, so that council and really this board has a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with, related to that. It's going to be really important, Lieutenant. So I appreciate you saying and understanding sort of our plight in terms of making sure that we have the data, right, to support that moving forward. And we need to hear from you what that's going to look like, because we're asking from council's perspective an evaluation of that program. And so I don't want us to start off on the wrong foot and not have all those measures in place. And so I'm hoping that if you need any resources, and there's an individual, I think, at New Mexico State University that's prime and understands and has sort of those data points that can really help us moving forward. His name is escaping me at this point. So, and we have our task force, our animal task force.
Yes, and that's exactly what we just met about last week. I was going to refer to Clint right there and be like, that's exactly what we were talking about, is exactly how are we going to ensure that this is working or is not working? Yeah. And like, what data are we collecting to make sure that we can come back to you in order to tell our story? So
Jo, I appreciate that. I really do. I just don't think you all have the time to do that. I really feel like hiring an evaluator that is going to collect that data, sure, understanding the data points, and you all are aware, okay, we have to make sure someone has to enter that data, right?
Yes.
But that then there's someone that can sift through that data and really analyze it and then be able to report back to us. So I feel like we're missing that piece, and so I'm going to encourage Mr. Enriquez and our upper management, at least from the city's perspective, to, I remember feeling very, very clear and about our accountability, right, to those numbers, and what story are we trying to paint in relation to a TNR program is great, but it's as good as that data, right? And I don't want to. You all already burden enough, and so I feel very strongly we need to have someone collecting that data and evaluating that for us to bring back to council. And I believe that those discussions, if you recall, were had at least in city council. So I know I'm driving that point home, but I really want to hear from you what it's going to look like, so that council can, and I remember Mayor saying, Well, I wanted to put an amendment, right, that I felt like we needed to have that component in our ordinance. Mayor said, why don't we allow them to sort of get up and running, and then they'll come back and let us know this is what we really need to have a successful program. So waiting on you, Lieutenant, to let us know, and maybe Clint and such.
I was going to say, it's that whole board.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
and it's working together, and yes, hopefully we'll have something to you within that 120 days.
Okay, great.
So-
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And this may be just a question to educate myself on what the city of Las Cruces is doing. But when we talk on encouraging updates to the microchip information, how do you all encourage that? I guess, and I know other than to try to educate and do that, is there any type of mechanism that kicks in for people that may have a change in address?
So my thought would be, especially once this ordinance takes effect at the end of the month, we have public information officers that can literally blast out a public information message in reference to microchipping, and so that's one of the ways. But obviously, it's really getting out into the communities and letting people know, and so it would be at community events. They just had a microchipping event like this last weekend, and so it would be at those events and letting people know, hey, this is coming into effect. This is taking place at the end of the month. If you move, realize you need to update this chip so that we know where your animal's located at now too. So it's taking efforts to educate the community by working the events, by going door to door, by having those conversations, but then using our public information officers.
And I'm just curious, like I said, and I mean, you guys have had plenty of discussions, and so I know this is, and I'm not trying to quote unquote armchair quarterback this at all. I just was curious if there's ever, when with the city having utilities and that type of information on a household level, is there any opportunity that there's a change in address, like to connect the microchip to a home address, so that if there's ever a change in address, change in name, that gets flagged by the utilities? Oh, by the way, maybe you should go speak to, the Animal Service Center or whatever it is to update this microchip is associated with this address. And if you're changing your address, let's change your microchip information as well.
If I hear you right, it's what you're saying is if like they change their utility address, maybe it's something that comes in a little like blurb to them that says, hey, if you have a pet, then please remember to update your microchip. Yeah, I love it. If we're able to do that, for sure.
And I don't know if there's any restrictions or anything of that nature that would prevent it. It's just, like I said, I think it's one of those things that comes to mind is that if you're changing address, usually that, how else can you tie that? Because I know, I mean, we struggle the same thing in the county. And it's just something I think if we could ever find a way to, it's that thing, because I mean, I'm guilty of when I moved, I didn't, when we first moved here, I forgot to update my microchip information. So it's just, when you're thinking of everything else, sometimes that's not top of the list. And so I understand that for residents to have that reminder, it's tough. But if we had there's a mechanism that could kick in some way, maybe even in the county side, if we could figure that out, that might be a way to kind of give them that reminder to be able to go and do that. So, all right, thank you, appreciate it. Oh, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. I actually think that's a great idea, and I'm wondering if we can't pair it, and this would be at least giving those resources to places that, I would say like home title places or Home Builders Association, to help like insert in a welcome packet when they're buying a new home or something like that, just as a reminder for like, these are some steps that you could take, these are resources for you. And so that might be an opportunity for us to pair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Are there any other questions? Oh, Mr. Enriquez.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Sanchez. And to elaborate or to add to Mayor Pro Tem Gondeta on the data and the evaluator, absolutely, that's something that we can look at. I think the Animal Service Center is already in the right path by hiring a grant writer. So now with that grant writer, it's hard to submit and apply for grants without the data. So this is a great way to complement that, is using that grant writer's knowledge and experience and what data they're looking for to find either another person or staff or things to help out with that. So I think they're already headed in the right direction. And one other comment I wanted to make, I wanted to acknowledge the animal control officers. As you can see, the increase in returns is because with the limited space or the increase in space over the last couple of months, it was a directive to make every effort, take the extra minute in time to locate the owners, and I think that's working. So just wanted to acknowledge them for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enriquez. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Ms. Ward, good morning.
Good morning. Mary Lou Ward, Doñana County Animal Control Supervisor. Let me pull up our report. So I'll be giving our report for July of 2021. Our reported strays for July for 2021 was 337 reported strays. Out of those 337, we picked up 173 of those strays. 83 of those were cats and 90 of those were dogs. In addition to those, there were 7 sick or injured animals that were picked up. 3 of those were cats and 4 of those were dogs. We also picked up 12 owner surrender animals. Those were all 12 dogs. If you look at our 4-year comparison of our strays that were reported for 2021, of course, the 337 compared to last year were 257. Of course, of COVID, a lot of people were indoors, so not as much reported last year. But if you go back into 2019, we had 332, so we're pretty much as close to 2019. So it looks like we're right on target with that. Our 4-year comparison for our return to owners went up. We returned 50 animals to their owners into the field. Compared to last month, we returned 26 last month, so I'm happy to report 50 this in July, so that's gone up. So of course our officers are doing everything possible. We are shorthanded, so that does make a big difference for us. We are currently in the process of trying to hire, doing background checks on a couple of employees that we're trying to hire. We are posting. I just submitted the paperwork for more posting for officers, and so we are in the process of filling more positions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
how many are we short?
We are short 5 officers right now.
Out of a total complement of how many?
We would have 10.
So we're 50% short.
Yes, sir. And that's because we've have either officers either on light duty, officers have just gotten a promotion. So I just had an officer that just moved from an animal control position to our caseworker position. So things like that. And so,
Were there any resignations or retirements?
We had some resignations, but not any retirements. Any other questions on that?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Mary Lou. Apropos of the vacancies, you have vacancies, but then again, a similar issue with the city. The vacancies are due to people retirement or resignations or moving to lateral or whatever positions. Would those 10 positions still, say optimally they were filled as they exist, would you still be in need of having, of needing more I think it's kind of ambiguous or weird how I'm asking, but I think you've been around me long enough to understand what I'm saying. Is that kind of clear?
Are you asking if we'd be benefiting from more positions?
Correct. Yeah, even after filling the 5 vacancies.
Absolutely. I know in the past, we do have one position that's an unfunded position. So yes, absolutely, our department will always benefit from from additional positions, especially animal control officers. You know, before COVID hit, we used to do our ACEs project. We would be really proactive. We would go out every month and do a lot of educational outreach. Of course, COVID hit and we had to stop that as a whole with animal control and codes. Our department has been separated, so we're no longer animal control and codes. We're just animal control. Codes has been moved under community development. So that, that separates those duties. We do still partner with codes. However, it leaves us with a very smaller team to utilize. So going out into the field and tag teaming with each other, you know, we don't have as many people to do that as we normally would have if we had an ACO and a codes officer to like go to a door-to-door or anything like that. So going into these big communities or going into these communities altogether doesn't allow us to do that right now with the number of control officers we have. For an example is we had last week, we had an event, a cleanup program in the Doñana area. Codes did. All we could afford to do was send one officer out there to assist. And of course, then we also had the Liaison issue with the flooding. Then HSS went out there to go door to door to assist the community members. We needed to be out there as well to assist with stray animals. All we could afford is to send one officer because we had other calls pending. So yeah, we definitely could, you know, benefit from more officers. Absolutely. You know, we do need to fill the positions we have. Management, higher management knows about that. They're in the process of trying to get those filled. What we have come down to, I think our problem is we will open up the positions. It's hard getting people. During COVID, it was hard getting people to come to work, to want to work, to even apply. That was our problem. The positions were open during COVID, trying to get people to apply. When we'd finally have interviews and try to go through the process, they don't want to work. So that's where, you know, I know we're not the only ones with that problem. A lot of other businesses have that same problem. So that's one of our challenges that we face.
So COVID was a factor, Mary Lou, but there's that was a factor in hiring. So do you foresee that? I mean, now we have this new variant or whatever it is. Do you see that to be a remaining? And is it an existing factor at this point again? With a spike?
I think that all depends on how the government handles things with the public and the assistance of the public, and how people want to work.
Right. And as you said, higher management at the county is aware of the situation with ACO specifically.
Correct.
So I'm sure they're taking care of it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores.
Any other questions on that? Then I'll continue. So looking at our additional pickups, we had, like I said, 0 owner surrender cats. So I'm sure Michelle will be happy with that. 12 owner surrender dogs, 7 sick or injured animals. We had 0 welfare holds, 0 animal cruelty neglects, and then, of course, just 7 at the animal shelter for those quarantines. I left this up as a reference point. Again, I will continue to leave this up here in the districts. And then going into the districts. So District 1, we had a total of 7 animals that were picked up. District 2, 44. District 3, 25. District 4, 39. District 5, 17. District 6, 20. And District 7, 21. So you can see where our hot districts are.
Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry for interrupting. Is District 4 the East Mesa one? Or is that District
No,
3?
District 3 is the East Mesa area. District 4 is going to be like the District 4 is going to be like La Mesa and further back.
Oh, so further south.
Yeah.
And so so you have more, and then District 2,
That'll be the Doñana and going a little bit further in that area.
So the outer areas outside of the city
Outside the city limits, yeah.
I have
Correct.
the higher strays. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Any additional questions on this slide for Ms. Ward? Okay.
And so our reason for owner releases, we had aggressive animals, 4 of them, home aggressive. I put that separately because they were really aggressive with their own owners. 2 of them for killing livestock. 1 of them because their dog was parvo positive and it was really, really sick. 1 was dangerous, and I put that separately, and I separated it from danger or aggressive because it actually was deemed dangerous by its own owner because it killed another animal. And then 1 that was it was sick, and they weren't sure what was going on with it. And then 1 that was so sick that it died while the officer got there. So those are the reasons. And if you all noticed in the last time we were here, I said we were not taking any more owner releases unless there are exigent circumstances, and I considered these to be exigent circumstances. Okay,
Mr.
any other
Chairman?
questions?
Commissioner Ellens?
What was the cause of death on the animal that was dead on arrival?
I don't know. The owner called and said it was really, really sick. It wasn't doing very well, and by the time the officer got there, it had died. We didn't send it off for a necropsy or anything. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Okay. On to shelter statistics and activities. Mr. Clint Thacker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For today, we have the director's report for the month of the month of July 2021. As you can see, the current count at the Animal Center is 592. That is much higher than it was during the COVID pandemic shutdown of 384, but it's still lower than it was in 2019, which is really the year that we're comparing things with. For our intake in 2021, 850 total came into the center. That would be 470 dogs, 374 cats, and 6 others. This is a list of the rescues or organizations that took a lot of our animals in July for the rescues. As you can see, a total number of 241 animals were rescued. Some of the higher ones that you're seeing there, Action Program for Animals, again, as she stated, was the top, I think the second one last year that took animals from us. They're always a high one. Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, that is generally like 1 or 2 shipments. They took a lot of cats this last time, which was a big help for us. Colorado Puppy Rescue was always a big number. Humane Society of Utah, who we appreciate greatly, took several shipments of our flights that went out. We appreciate their help. New Hope Animal Rescue, again, in Colorado. Seems to be a great place to take animals, but a horrible place for us to break down in. We had an individual that got stranded there for about 5 days while our van was worked on. I guess it's nobody wants to work on a transit van because it's right there in between a large semi unit and it's not really domestic unit like in a Ford truck. So we had to find a certain individual that would actually work on it. But we did. We got her home, luckily. And then other numbers say Pause for Life for Utah. They took some animals for us on a flight as well. So special thank you to all of our rescues, even the ones that I didn't say. One animal coming out of the center saves a life because that's one that we don't have to make room for, euthanize for, of all these animals that are coming in. Oh.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Ellens?
A couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
There's a rescue known as Nick O-Time Horse Rescue and Rehab. It took 3 cats.
Mm-hmm.
I assume it's a horse rescue operation. Why is it taking cats?
I would have to look into that and let you know. I can only assume that they wanted 3 cats.
I guess.
I can let you know.
Where is New Hope Rescue located? It took 49 dogs.
It's in Colorado. What city did I say? It just left me.
Okay. That's a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
Now, you had a big shipment going out this morning, but the notation was that you're still cramped for space, even after that shipment goes out.
Yes, because you have to remember that a high shipment like that, I believe 38 was the minimum. I think 38 animals left. I mean, that's a day and a half of intakes. So it fills up rather quickly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellens. And for what it's worth, according to their website, it's in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, thank you. For the returns
Were they,
for July,
were they mostly small dogs?
they were all sizes, but most of them were small dogs, yeah. For July 2021, for returns, we had 9 total dogs, 0 cats. And when I asked about these, if all of these were adopted in July, the answer was no. There was 2 that were adopted in April and some in May, but it was all of this year. None of these are what we would call the COVID return animals that are coming in because of lifestyle changes is the one that alerted me on that. But no, none of them were adopted in 2020. They're all 2021 dogs. Here's our outcomes. Again, it's important to look at percentages, not necessarily numbers here, because of the different statistics or the circumstances in 2020 and 2021. So adoptions, we hit 18% of our total outcomes in July. Reclaims was 12% versus 13%, so it's right there in the same. Rescued, we were lower, and that's because the rescues, as Michelle from APA indicated, it's really hard right now on us and on rescues because rescues are trying to move animals and they want to help the community centers, but because we are also having animals come in, but unfortunately animals are hard to move right now. So the rescue numbers are down. Community cats was 8.7%. Euthanasia did go up because of our increase. Low number from 2020, but our increase in impounds made it so we had to euthanize more animals at 24.8%. So our live release rate did go down at 73.4, but I'm thinking that that is a good number compared to, the conditions of in 2020 were outstanding.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Ellens?
Now that the city has adopted a TNR ordinance, has it gone into effect yet, and to what extent will it reduce the euthanasia rate?
So according to the city clerk, it begins on tomorrow, the 27th. The ordinance will be able to start sterilizing and microchipping and vaccinating the animals that qualify for the TNR program for the cats. In order for them to qualify, it means that they can't have any sign of ownership and they have to be healthy. So those animals that do qualify for that, there would be ones that we would euthanize but we are not, we would be releasing them. So all the euthanasias that we're seeing are mainly cats, and that's on my next slide, I believe. It shows the reasons for euthanasia. But it will impact greatly. And this is the slide I was looking at. So we had about 65 cats in the month of July that were euthanized because of feral. So all of those animals, if they qualified for the program, will be able to be sent out in the TNR program. Now, just of note, the TNR program has more than just feral cats, or community cats, I should say, leaving the center. What this is going to do is it's going to open up cages. Ringworm, you see, is the next highest reason. That is a fungus that is hard to overcome if the animal is stressed. If the animal is not stressed, it's fairly easy. It's just a fungus that we can do, but the stress part is the hard part. So the space that a cat has can be very stressful if it's confined, if it doesn't have the ability to get out. It may like a small place, like underneath your bed or in a secluded area, but it also has the options of being able to get out. And right now they don't. So we are euthanizing if they don't respond to the medical treatment for ringworm immediately or after the first doses, then we do unfortunately have to euthanize for that. So we're looking for that to go down as well. Same with respiratory signs. That's a big stress-induced one as well. So we're hoping to see a large decrease through the coming months of those types of sicknesses, or euthanasias for those types of reasons.
Hey, Clint, before you move on, I know the live release, well, the previous slide on slide 6, you talked the live release rate for July was 73.4. Where do we currently, and I understand June, July, the summer months, this has been really tough. Where do we stand for year to date, or for the year?
I don't have necessarily the year. I can tell you it's generally around this time of year. Year to date, we're around 73 to 75%. Again, 2020 was a great year for live release rates, but it wasn't a realistic one with the way that we are doing things. So yeah, I would probably say around 73, but I can get that percentage for you and send it out to the board.
Yeah, and I was just curious to know, because I know, like I said, the past couple of months, I know it's been, it seems like the pendulum is kind of swinging where, from 2020, because of the pandemic, we were on one side, and now on top of the busy time of the year, it's like you have a little more piled on, and I know you guys have been trying to work through that, but I was just curious to see where we're at in terms of what that data says. So, thank you.
I will get that to you. So our total visitors actually went up quite a bit, 1,179. And this is total visitors. This includes not only for adoptions, but also for our medical appointments and so on. So we're glad to see that is improving. This is our highest actual adoption appointments kept of 90%. And that was great. And then 72% of those were finalized adoptions. So that is a great percentage that we hope continues on. I think we'll see next month as we report August numbers, if the mandates that are being made with COVID are going to be affecting at all people getting out and about. Website views also went up considerably, 44,350. I'm hoping that this means that individuals are continuing to get how we are doing things. They're accepting that change of having to go and see the animals on the website first and then calling in and making that appointment.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
could you go back to the previous slide? Are you requiring people to go to the website before the appointment is finalized so that they've been able to view the possibilities that exist for them?
How it works, sir, is the individual sees the animal on the website that they would like to visit with, if it's an adoption appointment, and then they call the center with that animal number, and we let them know if that animal is able to be seen. If it is, then we set an appointment for them to come.
Do you make appointments with people who have not viewed the website?
No, because we don't allow people just to walk through the center anymore. So they would have to know, we would have to know what animal they want to see beforehand, because some animals, for instance, might be selected for rescue, or they might have medical condition that can't be seen at that time. Or they might have specific notes that the individual would need to know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Allens.
Our Facebook views took a big dive, and when I got this a couple days ago, I'm going to bring this up in our next managers meeting to find out what we did specifically in June that made that number so high, and then what we didn't do in July to keep that number higher. So that's something we're going to be looking at, because we had events, some events in July, but we're not sure why that was so low. We'll be looking at that. And there's our pets of the week, Mimi and Delson. If I could, if the city councilors, representatives could indulge me for a moment, did the pet of the week get presented on last Monday? No, it did not.
No, I don't believe so.
And I was absent.
Okay. So if an email went out, and we need to figure that out, because the time that it takes it sounds bad, but it's not worth for me to come and do it, and staffing levels being as they are, it is an issue having somebody else do it. We just don't have anybody extra. So the thought was, speaking with Eric and also the board representatives here, is that a counselor of the city would be able to do it that sits on this board. So I can get with you afterwards and find out what needs to be done, so that information can get to you, and we can have these guys presented at the board. With that said, the pet of the week is not going away. As far as everywhere else, we're going to actually looking at new revenues that we have to present them on Comcast, and also working with the city PIO to get that information out as well. So,
Excuse me.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then I'll go to Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Thacker, for that. Yeah, we had talked, you and I at least, that just hearing the issues and barriers, just how difficult it is to get from 70 over here. And I'm happy to read it. I mean, I gave the option out, but I didn't hear anything back. Did you send something to me and I didn't pay attention to it? So if you did, so sorry. I will be happy to do that, but I need some prompting, like, here it is, this is what we need, and be available for questions if I have them. I'm happy to read that and present to council.
great, thank you. And like I said, we get with you. I'm not specifically worried about it. I know that you guys all have a lot on your plate, and we can get that taken care of. Not worried.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. Councilor Flores?
Yes, I didn't receive anything, Clint, via email or word from anybody. I don't know who you spoke with making that request, but I am certainly happy to accommodate that need, if, certainly. So just let us know who it goes to, or if we're going to be CC'd on it.
I found it on Monday. That's not enough. Mondays are so cramped for me, and I don't look at my emails really as often on Monday.
It's hard.
So I'd recommend that you send that out to us like the week before, and just sort of thank you for I don't scan through my emails very much, Clint. I hate to say that I back myself up in the morning with several appointments and such, and I'm not looking at as I would other days. So I just found it, and I apologize. Yes, you did send it, so thank you. But on a Monday like that, it just doesn't help.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. The employee who does it, the earliest I could probably get it to you would be on Sunday.
Okay, that's fine.
for that to be
Sunday.
done. So usually
But a
she,
text to me, hey, I sent it, and
Okay.
I'll be looking for it.
absolutely, I can do that. And I can do that to all three of you, so it's not just you.
Okay, thank
Mayor
you.
Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Vice Chair?
Thank-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Clint. I'm happy to read as well. I was going to suggest perhaps for kind of efficiency's sake, we could also have Clint perhaps copy our administrative assistant, and perhaps then she could have it printed out on Monday mornings for you all. So if we can tie in those things, that might be an option, and that way, if somebody is gone or missing, that information is still disseminated. And
That's
we
a great
can get
idea.
you in contact with those.
Yeah, I usually forward the pictures, the PDFs to her, to Annette, and she's able to put them in the file folder.
And-
So I can just request her to print them out, and you can have that. And that's all I do is I just read what's on there about the animals, so.
Thank you. And we do have another administrator that works directly with counselors.
Oh, great.
So that might be a good tie-in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Councilor Flores, I apologize to,
Oh, no, that's certainly okay. I think the vice chair certainly takes precedence, so that's fine. So Clint, I think, I'm not familiar, I don't know about the technology, because I know that when Jennifer Martinez was doing it, it was going smoothly. I don't know why that changed. We're not privy to a lot of things that happen at City Hall. So maybe Mr. Enriquez, if I can make that request on behalf of this board and on behalf of the center to find out how it is we can do it so that it would be a lot easier, because I know that sometimes, for example, I've missed a couple of council meetings just because I hadn't had a vacation in over a year, and I was visiting my son and my granddaughter's baptism. As Councilor or Vice Chair Abeta Stubbe pointed out, she was absent in last week's meeting. So even Sunday is hard, but if we had it set up as it was before, I don't understand what happened. And I can't meddle in, telling administration what to do. But it is a request, certainly, for Mr. Assistant City Manager Enriquez to make that inquiry and see if we could reinstitutionalize it as we had it before. It just goes smoothly, that's all.
Yes, ma'am. The reason why I was told that we were asked to do it in case there were any questions about the animals, then we would have that information. That's what I was told. So, and when we were doing it Zoom, it worked out great. There wasn't a problem. I could have a staff member at the computer, and it was done easily. But coming here is causing an issue for that.
No, and that's totally understandable, being understaffed and all that. So thank you so much, Clint, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Councilor Flores.
If I could, sir, I want to also entertain one more. Our drive-through clinic on Sunday was a tremendous success. To give you a breakdown, we did 471 rabies vaccines, 333 DHPP vaccines, 139 Bordetella vaccines, 71 feline or cat vaccines. We did 239 microchips. We did, that would consisted of 350 vehicles, and we saw 560 animals. And this is between 9 and 2 on Sunday, so a huge number. We're very excited about it. It's actually about 200 cars less than it was last year that we did it, which I thought was interesting, being during the pandemic. I thought that more people might come out this year. The only difference is we did not have any radio advertising this time around, so I think that was probably part of it. But we increased the number of lines that we had. People were only waiting on average about 20 minutes, whereas before it was well into the hours they were waiting. So I'm very excited that I could recognize our staff there, especially Elizabeth Seeley and Dr. Haddon, who worked so hard to get it organized and was there, so we appreciate them.
Thank you to you and the staff, and I think one of the things that probably, it seems like that's one still really good turnout for the event, and I think one of the things that I noticed, particularly with, and I think this applies in general where we've mentioned, I think I've mentioned the social media posts that you do, you go live, you give updates, I know you've had it behind the scenes in the kennels, updates on the construction, but I noticed that in particular, the update you had that you went live at the Field of Dreams got shared multiple times through the various groups within Las Cruces, and so I know, people were asking, where's this, where's that, so they were, I think it did get some visibility through the social media outlets, and I think having the things that you're doing by trying to raise awareness or with the Animal Service Center and the things that you're doing are being recognized by the community. So I appreciate, even if you didn't have the radio advertisement, I think people are starting to see more and more on, and I don't know, I didn't see the data from Facebook on your report, but I would think I've been noticing more people sharing those updates that you've had.
Yeah, hopefully next month we'll be able to see this month's numbers on Facebook, so excited for that. Thank you.
All right, will that conclude the update on the shelter?
Yes, sir.
All right. So,
Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, Clint, I think you have one more event that you're working on, Clear the Shelter or Center.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Clear the Shelter is an event put on by NBC and Maddie's Fund. We have a sponsor this year, Borman Auto, came forward, and they're sponsoring all of the adoptions for the entire event. So it goes for 3 weeks, and that's huge. It's over, we're shooting for 160 adoptions. So it's free adoptions. It's going on right now. Special thanks to Borman Auto for doing that. And this is all animals, cats, dogs, all sizes. Just of note, if the animal is not sterilized at the time of adoption, the animal will stay there until it gets sterilized. It's only a day or two wait currently. So that's another plus. A big kudo to Dr. Haddon. She has pretty much eliminated our foster to adopt program, which is a good thing, very good thing. So,
Clint, does the sponsorship by Foreman Auto include the sterilization?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it includes everything.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Microchip, sterilization, vaccines.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, a big thank you to Foreman Auto. And thank you, Clint, for your work on that in the center.
Thank you. Our new grant writer, Elaine, is the one that has the kudos for that one. She's phenomenal in her already established connections in the city and throughout the county, but also going out and making these connections. And we have hopefully some grants that are going to be accepted, some big number grants that are going to help us make some big steps. So we're excited for that.
Great. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for bringing that that event. And thank you, Councilor Flores. Okay, we're moving on to item 4D, the new facility artwork.
And you still get me for that, Clint Thacker, Executive Director. I'm sorry. The presenter with the art department, Ceci, she is under a COVID watch, possible exposure. So she asked me to do this presentation. She sent me a script. How nice is that for her to do that? So I'll be reading that. It says, thank you for allowing me to present our Animal Service Center Public Art Concept Recommendation for you today. As you know, the art project is part of the new facility being constructed through Go Bond projects. This is for your awareness only, but your comments are welcome. The selection committee for the Animal Service Center Public Art Project met on July 29th for art concept proposal presentations from 3 artist finalists. The committee scored each artist based on project criteria. All 3 concepts were well presented, and 2 of the designs scored very closely. The call for artists stated that the piece should serve as a beacon and needs to be visible from the streets and freeway. It also asked that the art piece reflect the services of the center and engage the community. This map shows where the sculpture will be located. The selection committee loved the design proposed, created by artist Vito Di Bari, and the recommendation was approved by the City Art Board for presenting to City Council. So as you can see, it's a very prominent place right on the corner of Rinconada Boulevard and Baton Memorial West, and Highway 70 runs right below it there. Here's the design concept titled Sun Shelter. The artist was inspired by the Animal Service Center logo, using the same color palette that brands the center. The cutouts are influenced by elements found on the center's website. This is the artist's statement. My installation features a representation of a cat and a dog, beloved domestic pets, and two of the primary animals cared for by the ASCMV. The 9-foot-tall sculpture sees the two animals side by side, looking lovingly towards each other, radiating an energy of warmth and companionship. Directly behind them is the silhouette of a sun, with a cutout depicting a majestic bird flying overhead. The sculpture will be large enough to be an iconic focal point visible from multiple angles, as it is meant to be a beacon to the public. The symbolic elements, such as the sun, which is an emblem of protection that shines bright upon the animals, embodies values of human-animal care and promote responsible pet ownership. The sculpture is 9 feet tall by 7 feet wide and has both front and back views. The sculpture is made from powder-coated steel with laser-cut patterns. If you look closely, you'll see the laser cuts are cats, dogs, bones, fish, and maybe some other patterns. This design concept is for a single sheet of steel anchored to a cement base at ground level. Recommendations from the Art Selection Committee are: 1, modify the single sheet design to a layered concept to add stability against the wind load. They felt that the cutouts would not be enough to withstand the winds, especially in that location. And 2, add lighting to the design so it can be seen at night. The artist did not include the light because he thought the ambient lighting would be enough. Any questions or comments on the artwork?
Any questions? Councilor Flores?
I think it's beautiful, and I know that I'm the city liaison to the city council liaison to the city art board, and I know that they work very carefully in making this selection and very thorough. So I just want to thank the city art board, whose chair is Tina Ballou, and the entire board. Actually, we did have a presentation from them on another piece of work, which is actually the new fire station. And of course, they're different artists, but the process they go through is amazing. And it's amazing that it's all a volunteer board. And so thank you so much for presenting, Clint, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Any additional questions, input?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, sorry. I'm
No,
like
that's okay.
trying to look at all the lights. I'm still.
I know.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Clint. It's beautiful. Did you mention the name of the artist? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes, the artist's name is Vito Di Bari.
Vito
I think Italian.
Di Vitelli?
I'm sorry?
What's the last name?
Bari, B-A-R-I.
Oh, Bari. Okay.
Bari.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I was actually on the selection committee for the Animal Service Center Art Board, and it was an incredible process. I think there was 139 total artists that presented, and it was fathomable, the amount of art. I'm like, how am I supposed to choose my favorite among these? Because they just sent in samples, and they were gorgeous. And luckily, the selection committee, we worked really well together. We sat down, we knew what we wanted for the piece. They were great hearing my feedback. I told them that I was looking for something that people could touch and they could go to, that people would want their selfies by or be in the background of, and also I wanted it to look incredible. And I think this answers all those calls. I love the cutout inside each of the animals. That is actually from our website. If you go to our website, you'll see these little designs that are all around. I loved the research that the artist did on us, looking at our logo and just those small details. So I'm also excited to see the layered look of how it is. And the plan is that we would like some lighting down below or maybe in the middle, just like a LED strip so it shines up on it. Not we're going to be well below the light pollution code that the city has. So we just want it to be seen and look good, and everybody can know that's where the animal center is. And that's my presentation, sir.
Thank you, Clint. Looking forward to, I guess, as the project moves on. We're on to committee reports, and so we'll move on to the Finance Committee. Mr. Enriquez.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Sanchez. On August 19th, we did schedule a Finance Committee meeting, and at that point, Josh Sassville, he informed us that things were looking good with the finances thus far, and he's here to share his report today, so I'll turn it over to Josh Sassville.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Josh Saffel, and on behalf of the Finance Department of the City of Las Cruces, I'd like to present the unaudited financials as of July 31st, 2021. Starting off, we have our statement of net positions. This is just a few highlights. In the general fund, we had cash of $1,266,078 and receivables of $407,636. This gave us total assets in the general fund of $1,673,714. We had liabilities of $70,481, revenue collected in advance of $179,869, and that left us with an unassigned fund balance of $1,423,364. Looking at our capital projects fund, we had cash of $29,798 and a restricted fund balance of $29,798. We also had our capital assets fund. This here we see we have capital assets net of the accumulated depreciation of $181,759 and an unassigned fund balance of $181,759. Looking at our change in net positions, we see in the general fund total revenues of $730,746, total expenditures of $126,622. So we had a net change or a positive increase to the fund balance of $604,124 for the period. And there was no activity in the capital projects fund or the capital assets fund. So looking at our budget to actual, our change in net position, the total revenue of $730,000 is 19.2% of the budget, and the total expenditures of $126,000 is 3.3% of the budget. This being the first month of the new fiscal year, our budget parameter was about 8.3%. So we see our expenditures were well under that, and our revenue was more. Of course, that's due to the fact that both the city and the county contribute about 22% of their total yearly amount at the beginning in order to improve cash flow. So that's why we see that so high in our revenue. Here's our revenues and expenditures. Again, first month, so we really only see these two dots, just a large amount of revenue and just a small amount of expenditures. As we've seen in the past, the revenue is likely to drop as that contribution amount starts to even out, and the expenditures will more likely than not start to increase as well. Looking at our total expenditures, of course, our total expenditures were $126,622. Of that amount, 73% were personnel expenses, 21% were services, 3% were supplies, 2% was insurance, and 1% was other. And that will conclude my presentation. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Saffel. Are there any questions on the finances? Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Josh, Mr. Saffel. So it's an unaudited report, and it doesn't get audited till the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Usually we have one audit per year by an outside third-party entity. The one for 2020 is still ongoing. We hope to have that done and presented hopefully by March of 2022.
And that'll be presented to this board?
Yes, it will.
Great.
And I'm sorry, that was 2021 fiscal year, not 2020. That one's already done. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's understood. Thank you, Mr. Saffel, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Are there any other questions for Mr. Saffel? Okay. Appreciate the update. Okay, we're now on to the executive committee update, and I don't have much. I know one of the things, really the only item of topic we really discussed during that time is the work session that was being proposed by Mr. Thacker and having a discussion about it. And I know I had planned here in a little bit to have a discussion, but I guess right now actually might be a really good time, Clint, if you don't mind coming up. And so for the board members, I know there's been an email that we've sent out to discuss the work session, and we're looking right now at, or at least we're planned for a work session on Friday, September 10th, to go over and have a overall view of what the future of the ASCMV would look like, what would be, could be, what we could plan for, what the different changes that could really kind of optimize the services of the ASCMV. So I don't know, Clint, if you want to talk a little more about the work session and what we're going to be discussing from a high level.
I think it would be a good idea to keep everybody in suspense about what it's for. No, all it is I want the board to know what me and my managers, what we have a vision for the ASCMV. Obviously, what we're currently doing is it's working, but at a slow rate, and we feel it could be better. We see some gaps, like Michelle from APA mentioned, and we just want to see what we can do to fill them. These are big plans, I'll tell you right now. This is something that kind of like I was challenged by Mayor Pro Tem is, if you had a magic wand, what would you want? And this is kind of what we would like to present to the board. I'll have my managers there to answer any specific questions you may have about any of their requests. It'll be a simple PowerPoint presentation, and then hopefully it will be a lot of discussion. And we'll be able to make some plans so everybody can take it back to the city and also to the county and let them know of the plans that we would like to do, because again, it all takes that almighty dollar. But from the conversation, this discussion we had with the executive committee, there are some places that if efforts are combined, that it won't be such a big financial impact. So I'm excited to have that conversation with all of you.
So thanks, Clint. And yeah, and I know the discussion with everything else we normally have on our agenda, we felt that this might be better suited for a work session, so we could just focus on the one topic. And so right now, like I said, hopefully, I see it on my calendar here, but September 10th, Friday, I'm planning on being back here in City Council chambers to go over it. So I think that's all the update I had. I don't know if there's any questions from the board. All right, we'll move on to the Facilities Committee update.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you say, is the date the 10th or the 20th?
The 10th.
Okay, thank you.
September 10th, 9 a.m. 9, sorry, September 10th at 9 a.m. I know, we were talking 9 and 10 there, so we know so 9:10 on 9 a.m. Okay, we're moving on to the Facilities Committee report.
That's a tongue twister.
That one is. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Clint and I met virtually. It seems like forever ago, so I was like, let me jog my memory. I don't have the notebook in front of me because I changed notebooks. So basically, we speak in regards to everything having to do with facilities. I think there was a continued issue with HVAC, I believe. Clint's looking at me like, what the heck? So I know there was an issue. I don't remember specifically. Clint, help me out. Did you get it resolved?
I honestly can't say without knowing what the problem was. I'm at a loss as well. I mean, we meet at the very beginning of the month, and here we are, we do a report at the end of the month. So a lot of them have been resolved. I know that we had a button, an ADA automatic door opening. That was an issue that was ongoing. I've been in touch with the city facility director We're just waiting for the parts to come in and for the specialist to come down from Albuquerque to work on that button. I know that we had a break-in. That's something that happened before or after we met, Mayor Pro Tem, that I can report the side window of our lobby right at the front doors. They broke in about 3:30 in the morning on Tuesday. They tried to take one of our large TVs off the side of the wall. They were unable to get it off the wall, and then they exited. They were only in the building for maybe 10 minutes. We looked through all the cameras, saw that they did not go anywhere else but the front lobby, and then they exited through the same window. I would like to know what the ultimate goal was, because he was riding a bike, and it was a 75-inch TV. So maybe there's talents there that I don't know about. But it would be interesting to see. So we had that, the window, we were told by Rawson, was a special order tint. So it was not able to be replaced that same day, but they said that it should be done this week. So that ends tomorrow. So hopefully today or tomorrow they're able to get that installed. I know that we have a project working on right now where to relocate the retention pond that's in the, I guess it would be the northeast corner of the building. We have it's not a large pond, but it's a ponding area that water comes off the building, and also that side of the drainage area. The problem is that was done when the building was first completed, so back in 1985, and the area sediment has filled, and it doesn't drain properly anymore. So if we get any amount of water, it's compounded by being a low point where all the water drains into it. We have frogs, tadpoles, and mosquitoes in that area. The problem is mosquitoes come and they have a tendency to bite the dogs that have heartworm. And heartworm is passed on through mosquitoes. So they would pass on to other animals that are there. Obviously something we can't do. This was brought up by Dr. Haddon last year, so we got quotes for it. The project scope has changed several times because of the new construction, but I feel like we finally have a really good plan of it was going to dig it out and just keep it there, but we decided with the construction going the way it is and also how we want to use that center, we need to have the extra parking and also the mobility, because it's right in the area that we try to make a sharp turn to the back of the center. Mm-hmm. So the plan now is to cover it up or to fill it and then put a grate at the lowest point in that parking lot area, and then have a pipe that runs out and it empties into another new retention pond that's off of the property. So the quote we received 2 days ago to do that in 2 different locations, because we have a retention pond also in the employee parking lot area and also in the back area that we want to replace, was with tax and also with contingency was about $22,000. So we're looking and seeing if we have anything in our budget that we'll be able to use to put towards that, because we had about, I want to say about $10,000 was allocated for that amount from our previous quote that we got earlier in the year when it was a different scope of work. So we're seeing if we have that other money so we can do that relocation. But other than that, Mayor Pro Tem, I believe everything else is going really well at the center.
Thanks, Clint, you did jolt my memory, and I remember the retention pond conversation. Okay. But we also talked about the new facility and where you're at. Things are rocking and rolling, and I'm seeing posts at your Facebook Live posts related to that. I think that's really helpful, and there's so many people are excited about the new building and what's happening over there. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we take a picture up from our current building roof over the area every Thursday afternoon and then post it on Facebook so people can see the progress. Right now they're digging footings for the main building and roughing those in, getting ready for cement. The large mound of dirt, I assume, is going to be moving here shortly, that's out in front, because they were able to relocate, or not relocate, but tie into the main water line that's right there, that's out in front of the center. So we're excited for that, to be able to get that going, and to see that continual improvement. So they said there hasn't been any delays so far as COVID delays, anything like that. So we are still on track for that, July, August completion date next year.
Thank you so much. And that completes our report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. Are there any questions on the Facilities Committee? Okay. All right, well, moving on to action items, section 5, or agenda item 5A. Resolution 2021-07 to transfer funds from fund balance to operating account for new construction.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. William Blanchard, Budget Analyst for the City of Las Cruces. And I have an amendment to this resolution. I believe it was passed out to all of you prior. In the previous resolution, the exhibit showed that this was being budgeted in Fund 7440, and it needs to be budgeted in Fund 7441, so the exhibit was changed. And the resolution is to do a budget adjustment for some kennel purchases in the new Animal Service Center building. Due to the COVID-19 issue, the cost for the new facility went up, and the Animal Service Center is having to cover some of the furnishings and fixtures for their new Animal Service Center. So the budget adjustment is that we are taking $270,000 from Fund 7440. We are transferring it to Fund 7441, the Animal Service Center Capital Fund, and then we are budgeting building improvements of that $270,000. And with that, here are your board options, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions of this resolution? Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Blanford. Why was the incorrect or the other fund listed? Was it just a typographical error, or?
I made a mistake.
Oh. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Leanne.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, can I get a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-07 as amended, or to reflect the funds coming out of Fund 7441?
So moved.
I moved by Councilor Flores.
I think.
And I'll take a second. I'll take that as a second by Commissioner Allens.
Okay.
Okay, and any other input? All right, seeing none, will you call the roll, please?
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens?
Yes.
Board Member Gandara?
Yes.
Board Member Abeta Stuve?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank
you. All right, our resolution is passed. All right. Oh. No problem. All right, we're on to the public input portion of our agenda. Are there any members of the public that would like to provide input? Please.
Hello, Chair and Board. Michelle Mounier again from Action Programs for Animals. I have an input about microchips. Now, it gets really complicated when you're talking about microchip databases. We had an incident recently where an animal control officer had a dog of ours on her truck, a dog that was adopted from us about a year ago on her truck. She only checks for microchips in the ASCMV Shelter Love database. And that's problematic if that's what all animal control officers are doing, because not all animals are chipped at the ASCMV. So when you are talking about matching animals to their owners, animal control should really be training their officers to check for the chips on petmicrochiplookup.org, get the chip company, and you call the chip company directly. Because many people will also only update their information with the chip company and not the animal services. So when you're talking about public education about keeping their microchips up to date. They really should be updating their information with the microchip company. Even if a chip originates from us, for example, or another vet, if they call us and say the chip originated from you, all I can tell you is the first original owner information we have. Any updates after that we probably didn't get. And then many people chip their animals out of this area or at veterinarian clinics. So only checking for microchips on the shelter database is not good because you might be missing something. Like the reason that animal control officer called me is because we had pulled that dog from the shelter. So luckily she was able to reach us, to reach the owner. But if she had just gone directly to the chip company, she could have reached the owner faster. So I guess my input is for animal control, both supervisors, to make sure that their officers know to look up the actual chip company for that chip and contact the chip company directly and not only look it up on the ASCMV database. We all have separate databases, in other words, and it can get very confusing. Hope that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Michelle.
Yes.
Thank you for alerting that to us.
Mm-hmm.
The dog I have, my baby,
Mm-hmm.
the ownership or contact information was changed,
Mm-hmm.
and Frank Bryce came by to do it.
Uh-huh.
And then, so there was a company that, that did it.
Mm-hmm.
So would they be, if Edie was, whatever?
I
found,
always tell people,
how-
even who adopt from us, or I don't know what the shelter does, but always check with the chip company yourself a few weeks later and make sure it was registered correctly. If you go to a clinic, if you adopt an animal, if you get an animal from a friend and you think you changed the information, make sure that you call that company within a few weeks to make sure it's registered correctly and to the correct information.
Well, if it has that correct information, say the APO or the ACO,
Mm-hmm.
contact, I don't know how chips work. I mean, I know there's identification number and they have my number, but how does that work when, so does the chip have the contact information for the company that put it in, and does that company have a network of other, I don't know,
So
to contact?
each chip company has its own database. When they bring an animal to me or APA that's chipped, we scan it and get the chip number first.
Uh-huh.
When you get that chip number, what I'm saying is ACOs shouldn't just look for it in the Animal Services Center Shelter Love system. They should also be looking it up on petmicrochiplookup.org. That tells you which company specifically to call. It could be 24-Hour Pet Watch, it could be Home Again, it could be PetLink, it could be any number of chip companies. So if an owner got a chip, let's say at a vet clinic, and not the shelter, not us, we won't have that chip in our database. So that's the only way to find the owner information is to go directly to the chip company. And what the chip company can do is find out the owner information and the originator. So many times we get called for chips that originated from us, from a clinic. They weren't our animals, they were public animals, but we can still find some information that way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you
I
for
hope that
explanation.
answers your question.
Kinda,
It's a little
sorta.
complicated.
It is complicated.
Yes.
And it's kind of it's kind of alarming to think
and-
that you have a chip and, oh, if Edie gets out, I'll get a call, and
Yes.
now there may be a problem with getting no call.
Right, like this animal control officer is fairly new. I know her because she used to work at the shelter. It was Janine. So she only checked the chip in the shelter database. Luckily, the dog was chipped there, so they saw that they transferred the dog to us. But if it's the case where us or the shelter are not involved, they need to contact the originating or the chip company itself, in other words. Yeah.
Thank you,
I
Michelle.
hope that makes sense. Yes,
Yes,
thank
it
you.
does. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Okay, are there any other public input? Please go ahead and come on down.
Good morning. My name is Jessica McCall. I'm actually a local vet tech here in Las Cruces. I honestly wanted to come here and just give these guys actually a really good round of applause to what they've been doing to try and change what's happening in Las Cruces, but I do feel that their hands are very much so tied. In regards to what Michelle Munier mentioned about the cats and their upper respiratory issues that they're facing, this is not new. This is something that we're facing on a canine and feline level. In addition to that, I feel like the public, unfortunately, is not in a financial position to be able to address these illnesses appropriately, and even more so have those resources be available to them. For example, most of your animal hospitals right now are completely understaffed, overrun, overbooked, and completely burnt out. There's a lot of emotion that goes into rescuing animals, in particular ones that have been abused in the past. I feel that when it comes to animal control responses to severe situations, that response is so limited that people have lost a lot of faith in animal control officers responding to certain situations, especially about abuse, neglect, underweight. I myself really try to help neonatals, meaning bottle bed babies, things like that. And I'm finding that, every mama that I get, it's about this thin. It's a lot of education that goes into healthy practices for your pet. And if that stuff is not accessible, for example, the new ordinances for microchipping, what Michelle Munier said is just absolutely correct. Microchips absolutely have to be registered in order to be valid. They have, if only we could have every animal hospital make sure that every pet is microchipped. That would also help you guys. I think that involving the animal hospitals of Las Cruces in the planning of this will help you out greatly, because they are also in between a true animal abuse case and one that just needs to get back to a good home. There are lots of times where a veterinarian is faced with, I just don't have the money to take care of this animal. And a lot of times they end up at the shelter. They end up in these animal control officers' cars because the people have nowhere else to go. You guys have great programs in place, the SNAP program. I know that we have the ARF funding. I think that that should be just expanded to different levels, because if your citizens have more opportunity to outreach when they're in time of need, especially during financial constraints, a lot of your babies would be taken care of. A lot of them wouldn't be surrendered for things like aggression. If, let's say, we had an outreach program that offered funding for trainers that could come out and help. So if it's avoiding a pet being abandoned or surrendered, we should probably look into that route as well. There are many, many things that are overlooked. You can look on Facebook every day and find a post of, this baby is running through the streets. I don't know where she's coming from. She's so thin. We can't catch her. And there's all these citizens, these community members that are just outpouring. How can we help? Do you have a trap? Do you have food? Does anybody have an extra leash? There's so much that they're willing to do, but they also need help in order to get to that state. The other thing that I am just drastically trying to push is the educating of this. Education is the only way that these people are going to understand where the right route is and where the wrong route is. I think it's absolutely despicable how many times people get the opportunity to hurt their animal in this town before we actually have the right to say, hey, we need that baby to leave your care. I feel that as much as these ordinances are going in the right place, there's also some room for opportunity to grow, in the sense that owners need to stop putting their responsibility on that shelter, on APA, on Cherish Canines. Any of these local rescues, they're completely overwhelmed because they're being asked for help. These people need the help, and if they can't get it, they're going to relinquish the animal. And that's just the circle of it. Your animal hospitals are your first line in being able to help instill these new laws, these new ordinances, and just frankly, standard care. into these owners' minds and educating them in that regard.
Great.
Sorry.
And thank you for that feedback, and we appreciate that. Okay, any additional feedback? Or public input, sir? All right, I don't see any additional, so we'll move on to chair and board comments. I don't know if there's any board member that'd like to make any comments? Final? Okay. All right, we'll move on to adjournment. If I can get a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved by Flores.
Second.
All right, it's motioned by Councilor Flores, seconded by Vice Chair Abetes-Tuvi. All right, and so if there's no opposition, we'll call this meeting adjourned at 11:06 a.m. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all September 10th at 9 a.m.